Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Feliz. I'm the Executive Director of One Nation, Every Vote, or OneV. As you know, we're a nonpartisan organization that shares the experiences and stories of American voters and communities that honor their roles as voting citizens. OneV also offers facts and information about past and upcoming elections with the hope all Americans exercise their right to vote across all levels of government, local, state, and federal. In 2022, OneV is committed to providing vital information on state-level races, which often don't get enough attention. Most of the stories, as you know, are about federal races, the midterms, and the presidential election in 2024. However, state-level races hold an enormous amount of influence. These public officials have a lot of power around specific issues that affect ordinary Americans and have great implications for fairness of elections, including presidential contests. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Joey Andrews, who is running for the House of Representatives in the state of Michigan, District 38. Joey is an advocate and community organizer. He was born and raised in Southwest Michigan's coastal communities. Joey champions clean air and water, sustainable, resilient infrastructure, and good jobs for working families. Let's turn our attention now to our very special guest. Hi, Joey.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. It's going great. Thank you for joining us today. Joey, I want to start really at the beginning. If you could just start at the beginning, telling us about your background, your personal story, and really how you got to this point of running for public office, but really starting with your background.
Yeah, so like you said, I grew up in Southwest Michigan. My family's been here for about 5 generations, so it's we're longtime residents of the region. I went to law school at Wayne State University out in Detroit, graduated in 2013. Came back home to help my parents' small business that was kind of on its last legs after the recession. And, we did a lot of restructuring and, kind of reorganizing everything and got it back on its feet over the course of about 5 years and got them to a point of being able to retire, which was not something that was on the table when we started reorganizing. So, it was a hard time for a lot of people here in those like post-recession years. During that time, I ran a solar installation company for a few years with some friends in Tennessee that I went to college with. And eventually I ran for the state house seat in 2018 in the old, like very gerrymandered districts here, as a way to sort of say that we thought things were changing here and we wanted to see what would happen if you ran a full, robust campaign and how much you could move the needle, which we were fairly successful at doing, even though we couldn't really ever win that old district. I worked for the the Biden and Peters campaign in 2020 as the regional field director for the Southwest Michigan area, and currently work for the Michigan AFL-CIO as a policy analyst and previously doing some labor organizing.
Wonderful. Well, Joey, thinking back to just the different jobs that you've held, from working on labor to renewable energy and all the advocacy that you've done, why do you feel that public office is your next best step, considering all the things you've done professionally?
Yeah, I think, one of the things I started noticing in each of these projects, whether it was, working with the family business, the solar industry, labor organizing, is that at the end of the day, all of this is directly impacted by the policies that come down from Lansing and Washington. A lot of the struggles that my parents were going through in business was related to regulation that is harder on small businesses than it is on big corporations and make it hard for the little guys to compete. Our solar company ran into a lot of issues with Michigan's, kind of hostile regulatory system towards like net metering and that sort of thing. And anybody who works in labor will tell you, stories for the last 30 years of how unfriendly a lot of the labor laws have been, and the right to work system in Michigan now. And it's been a struggle. And at the end of the day, all of it comes down to decisions being made by politicians in Lansing and Washington. So for me, a big part of running was trying to address those concerns and represent a community here that never really gets its voice heard prior to the redistricting, kind of creating a better district for all of us.
Absolutely. So it's really just looking to make a sort of bigger impact in the areas that you've worked in, dealing with it from the policy angle. Thank you, Joey. Joey, looking specifically at District 38, can you tell us a bit about your district, what's unique about it, and what are the main issues that folks in that district are dealing with that, for which you're hoping to make a difference?
Yeah, I'd say the number one issue that we've really been focused on this year is the affordable housing crisis locally, a lot of which has been driven by the vacation rental, like Airbnb industry. The 38th district runs the whole coastline of Southwest Michigan from Saugatuck to New Buffalo. And it's a lot of like very beautiful territory, but also, vacation towns, resorts, that sort of thing. And as a result, there's a lot of people that want to vacation here, which means the vacation rental industry has just exploded over the last few years. But as a result, a lot of what would have been sort of like starter homes, middle class working, family housing has been gobbled up by these out-of-state real estate companies and turned into vacation rentals. And then that in turn drives the prices of all of the surrounding real estate through the roof, because anything can be a vacation rental. And so it's really put a squeeze on people just trying to live and work here, raise families here. It's made it impossible for some to stay, and it's made it hard for people who want to come here in the first place. So there's the main focus that we have here is keeping control over that local with municipalities. And there's a fight going on in Lansing right now where a lot of interest groups are trying to get the caps raised so that municipalities can't overly restrict the short-term rentals. And our argument is the local communities are the best fit and set up to figure out how to address the situation for the needs of the people that live in the city or the township that they live in. And so we want to give more power to the municipalities, more regulatory tools, more options to address this and get it under control so that people who live here year round or want to live here year round have options.
Absolutely. Well, we know that our nation is in a crisis when it comes to affordable housing, and you may or may not know that my day job is actually around affordable housing. So I'm sure you and I can talk for hours about these issues. I'm happy to offline anytime, but I'm glad that it's getting this much awareness, and we're talking about affordable housing more these days than ever. So I'm glad you're working on those issues. Moving on to a different but also very salient issue, voting rights. We know that's become a really important issue, especially since the 2020 election. My question for you around voting rights is, how can you help in this next phase, should you win as a legislator, to help with voting rights, to empower voters, and make sure that we can ensure greater access to the ballot?
Yeah, I mean, the states are where a lot of this fight really is. So I think state legislatures is exactly the place to be looking when it comes to voting rights legislation in general. Obviously, we have Proposal 2 on the ballot in Michigan this year, which would seek to expand some of the voting rights that we established back in 2018 via the ballot proposal back then. So there's a lot of, I think, good opportunity this year to continue making Michigan a better and more friendly state for voting in general, which it really wasn't prior to 2018. We've made leaps and bounds over the last 4 years. But I also think, if we get a trifecta, if we flip both the House and the Senate this year and keep the governor's mansion in Michigan, we have a real opportunity to expand this even further, creating early voting timelines, making the absentee ballot access even better, maybe prepaid postage, for instance, would be a huge deal that we could do. Better funding the Secretary of State's office so that they can administer elections more efficiently. There's a lot of, I think, quality of life improvements that we could make that, maybe don't seem so like earth shattering on paper, but make a huge difference to how quickly votes get counted, and how, how much more efficiently we can administer elections so that we don't end up with election nights like, 2020, where everything was kind of chaotic for the first 48 hours because nobody was allowed to open a ballot until 8 p.m. on election night, and early voting windows would make a big difference, I think, for a lot of people's perception of how elections work. And I think that's a lot of the issue that we see right now, is that people don't understand how elections are administered, and the mess in the system is inbuilt, it's intentional. There's just been like decades long attacks on ballot access and voting rights and everything. And so it leaves the impression with people that there's something, like nefarious happening, or there's something broken in the system. And I mean, there is something broken in the system, but it's an intentional break. And I think if we just, make some quality of life improvements, fund the administration better, allow for early voting period, early ballot counting, that sort of thing, you smooth everything out to a point where it fixes that perception that people have that something's like off. And once you fix that, I think it's, overall, you start to get to a better system too. So.
Definitely. Yeah. While so much attention, has been devoted to possible, federal election reform, like the John Lewis Act and, other bills, this is certainly a good reminder that states play an enormous role in, in the area of voting rights. So thank you for that reminder, Joey. We appreciate it. Speaking of state elections and, legislatures being overlooked, I'm sure that when it comes to voter turnout and just voter attention in general, it might be a bit of a struggle, for yourself and some of your peers to really get that attention. And so my question for you is what do you do to convince your constituents that they should be, caring more about state legislative races as much as they care about presidential contests and, U.S. Senate and U.S. House races?
Yeah, well, I mean, first and foremost, we knock a lot of doors, which I think, in the first place, is something that the higher up races don't have, as much capacity to do. It's really difficult if you're running for Congress or higher to knock on every voter's door and have a conversation. But we can do that on a state level campaign. So I think getting to, meet the candidate or like meet people associated with the campaign is a lot of help in, getting people to kind of think about it more. But when I talk to people about it, I always focus on very local issues. And I try to remind people that, the federal government has a really hard time getting anything done lately. It feels very broken, the system we're working with in Washington, but there's a lot we can get done from Lansing, from the state, if we have good people, who are willing to work instead of obstruct. And, we often will talk about the housing crisis. We'll talk about, the unsustainable local economy that we have, water quality issues. And these are things that people care a lot about. And I think it helps too to break through some of the noise, that like cable media, social media bubble that people are in, where like these, talking points fly back and forth. Nobody on the federal level is talking about these hyper local issues in a way that polarizes them. So it helps to like break through the noise a little bit, I think, when you have those one-on-one conversations about local issues, and just remind people that, despite what it seems like things are like on cable news, that on the ground, like people are people and you can talk to each other, and, you can actually talk to your state representative or your state senator in a way that you can't with your federal representatives. So, I think we've had a lot of success with that, just kind of, making it local, helping people recognize that there's a real human element to all of this. And, I think people feel really disconnected from their politics lately, I think, and these local races are a really great way to reconnect with people and let them know that they do have a voice in things.
All right. And to your earlier point, Joey, it's about reminding folks that the issues you're working on are more directly impacting their everyday lives, as opposed to some of the issues that are being dealt with at the federal level, which, if they're lucky enough to pass, don't have as direct an impact as the issues that you're working on. So a great reminder. Joe, it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and we really appreciate your generous time. Final softball question for you: if we want to learn more about you, your story, and your candidacy, where can we learn more?
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, or our website. Andrews for Michigan gets you to all of them, at Andrews for Michigan, Andrews for Michigan. So, yeah, find us online. We're pretty active. And, again, local races, any messages you send on any of those platforms, they get to me right away. So it's very easy to ask questions and, get involved.
Great, great. Joey, thank you so much. We know you're incredibly busy. We wish you the best of luck. Look forward to seeing how things unfold in this election season. On behalf of OneV, thank you for sharing your time with us, for sharing your story and your passion for public service. And to our followers, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at our next conversation in our 2022 state legislative series. Cheers.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Joey.